All right, so hello guys, welcome to PDQ podcast. Right now, we're all in our houses because of the coronavirus, and so the topic of today's discussion and podcast is going to be the xenophobia and racism occurring within the coronavirus situation today. So, any one of you guys want to start off the discussion today?
Well, okay, I guess I can start. So, uh, let's start. I know a few examples in the US, especially about the xenophobia regarding the coronavirus. It's directed at Asians in particular. And I think there were two cases of people pushed down the at like at the metro. So like in the metro there's the rail and there's like people stand on the sides. There were two cases where people were pushed off because they were Asian and they wore masks. And like one got severely injured and one was slightly injured. So this is like I think people like the coronavirus has caused like people it's an outlet for people who are so irrationally scared that they're willing to kill another person just because they think it will affect them in a negative way. I personally don't feel that it is all racism. Well, no, sorry, reiterate. I don't think it's all coronavirus. I think the coronavirus is just an outlet for the ongoing racism, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the thing is that it's happening inside China as well. So, so I've got a couple of family members actually. Whenever they hear a person like coughing, they'll be like, "Oh, I bet that person's from Wuhan," or "I bet that person's from Hubei," and I'm here like, it's a person who's coughing. Maybe they just have asthma. I don't know. And so they're really scared about this. And then there've been some more extreme cases where people who haven't been wearing masks have been like pretty much ganged up on and like kicked and stuff for not wearing masks and purposely transmitting the virus, even though it's just them walking around not wearing a mask. And so with the TV, even though I know that's not a very reliable source, but let's just be honest, it's it's news, and I watch it, and we've got like thousands, maybe hundreds. Let's just be realistic of videos just circulating around, saying just systematic, pretty much abuse and like sometimes xenophobia, sometimes racism about this kind of situation, and it's not just happening. It's not just happening outside China; it's happening inside China as well.
You guys think like the racism and just repelling other people just for the sake of the virus is something that's inherent that only the racists or only the ones who already had problems with Asians are doing, or just is what the situation has created? Because that's what's happening right now. I've seen comments or perspectives of people who are saying that the coronavirus isn't the cause of the racism or isn't creating racists, but is actually just making the racists have an excuse for their comments.
Actions, yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
You definitely have a point there. So you can especially see a lot of the places that those kind of like if you look at outside of China, in Asia, you see in America, you see that kind of. I do believe that there are people there who are racist and are just using the situation to emit that and have like a certain feeling of that's okay to do. But then as well, that doesn't necessarily explain how inside of China, how Chinese people are angry and slightly racist to their own colleagues and to the people that live in their own city and people that they've known, but like as Jordy said, just coughing. So it depends on the situation, I believe. It's not necessarily one or the other.
Well, I definitely believe that people all have inherent or perhaps unseen xenophobia to other people. And I actually disagree in a sense that I think people do have the problems prior to the coronavirus to begin with. And like because like paranoia and like fear is an amplifier of those things, they just tend to make them like project themselves louder and more, make them more willing to commit like actions based on their beliefs. This is what I think.
Well, the thing is that fear can make people make so many irrational decisions. And the thing is that, like, the people of Asia are just such a convenient excuse and an outlet for that fear. And that's why I think this whole entire xenophobia and racism thing is going on, because the thing is that everyone wants an excuse and everyone wants a reason for what's happening right now. And just there being a convenient excuse is just so much better than not knowing who to blame.
Because it's just another example of just scapegoating a certain group of people just for the sake of a situation, right? Like for example, I think Hitler and the Jewish population also. Hitler was also blaming the Jewish population for lots of societal issues occurring in 20th century Germany. You know, it's. I mean, I feel like it's really funny how history kind of also repeats itself in that way. Not funny, but like very interesting how people don't really learn the lesson. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we see over and over again because of what's happening right now. But regarding to what you said, there's been like a lot of that's what also like history classes are for, is to stop such things from happening. But when you look at it, there aren't that many like specific classes potentially on like racism and xenophobia and stuff like that. So maybe that's something as well that should be incorporated to combat such things from happening again in the future.
Speaking of like fear and then causing people to, well, then making racist people more racist or xenophobic people more xenophobic, do you guys think this fear is justified or rational?
Well, people have an inherent fear of the unknown. And with this new coronavirus, it's very much unknown to them. And it's like what H.P. Lovecraft did with his books. It's that people are afraid of the unknown, and therefore, and it's absolutely logical because hey, because anything you don't know, well, back in the days, might have killed you. So that's just something that's passed down, and if you don't know something, then you're afraid. And so with this coronavirus being just so new and nobody can find what's the exact source of it, because people have said it's from eating wildlife, but then we've got also American sources saying that this has been genetically altered by humans. And since it's just so random and just increasingly weird in the virus world, it's kind of scary, man, because people are thinking, oh my god, it's a bioweapon, and people are making ridiculous assumptions because they don't know what's going on, and that's perfectly justifiable because people do irrational things when they're scared.
I think to play on with the idea of like people making irrational decisions and spreading things because of the fear, I think a lot, especially with this situation, is like the dangers of social media and fake news. Because what I've been seeing in the news is there's been thousands of posts and Instagram posts and Facebook posts regarding fake information regarding the coronavirus, and I think that sparked more violence and kind of hatred against the Chinese who apparently caused the situation.
I mean, also, plus, like, people love conspiracy theories because they want a control or a sense of perhaps justice, and in a way that, like, oh, a plague doesn't happen because it happened. A plague happened because you people sinned and like God wants to like punish you. That's how like religion works, right? But so like in this case, like there's a lot of like I don't think you can prove that the coronavirus comes from anywhere technically. So I'm just calling everything like conspiracy theories. So like in this case, as Jordy said, where no one knows where this really comes from, there's not really a cure for a virus that kind of this new, and like even if there is, people still have to test it and distribute it and make it. So like is it really just like say like I before we started the podcast we discussed that the mortality rate for coronavirus is just about 0.5 percent with sufficient like medical support. So are we really that justified in being scared of the coronavirus? Because despite of the fear of the unknown, we know we people can think logically. We do know that like that mortality rate of 0.5% is not that scary or is not that worth to push someone off a metro or like kick this person who isn't wearing a mask. Anyone?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I think I do agree with your statement. And the point is, I think to some extent, a dosage of fear and caution against the virus itself may be good for just taking care of your own body. But then at the same time, I feel like a lot of the times media or like irrational decisions because of fear kind of further push people who originally weren't racist or originally weren't xenophobic into doing things like that as well.
Mm-hmm. So there's also a group mentality where like, hey, if everyone's scared around you, you don't want to be the only one that's not scared. And if everyone's kicking someone, sometimes, hey, if you're not kicking that person, you're the one who's going to be kicked next. So it's kind of like peer pressure. And it's just, it's really difficult because if most of the people around you are doing it, or at least you think that they're doing it, then you will be pressured into doing it yourself.
Can you elaborate on like how the source of these fears about the coronavirus come from group mentality? Because it seems to me that, like, for example, you talked about like those conspiracy theories regarding humans like genetically engineering this new virus. And all of this doesn't seem to be a result of group mentality, but of the result of like politicians with an underlying political agenda that's clearly against China, like diplomatically speaking, using coronavirus merely as a tool to, influence the population opinions in order to fulfill their political agenda. This to me doesn't seem like really a product of group mentality where the people are victims and their rationality is justified. What do you think about it?
I'm not saying that the origin is from group mentality, but I'm not saying that politicians aren't doing that, because let's just be honest, they are. The thing is that from a person who is normally a normal person, who is non-xenophobic and non-racist, to turn into a xenophobic and a racist, it doesn't, the start doesn't have to be you, right? So it might be social media, it might be the politicians, because you feel like everyone around you has the same position with people being xenophobic and racist. You should be against Chinese citizens because that is what everyone's doing. And then you feel pressured to be like, be xenophobic and racist with them. I'm not saying that the start is someone feeling group pressured. I'm saying the reason why the xenophobic and xenophobism, I don't know, and racism is spreading is because of that group mentality pressure.
Right, but I don't think that in a modern day and age where scientific information is so accessible that like this group mentality, I don't think that there is really such a proof for group mentality that coerces people into just feeling that way. I don't think necessarily that, for example, all Americans think badly about Chinese in the way that the press seems to portray. I don't think that there's really this environment for group mentality to even occur. So what I'm trying to say is that, like, do you really think that these people who kind of justify their own irrationality based on what politicians say, do you think that's even justified? Because I don't think that it's justified for them to really adopt these xenophobic behaviors and mentalities simply for the reason that their politicians have.
Well, yeah, I understand. And the thing is that some people are very extreme in that they follow politicians almost to like heroic levels where anything the politician says is right, and they'll support them with every move that they do, even though if some are inherently wrong. See, this is like what happened. This has happened many times throughout history, and thing is that when you trust or believe in someone to extreme levels, you don't really understand what's right or wrong anymore, unless what they're saying is right and what they're not saying is wrong.
Right, but that's like back in history. We're talking about like contemporary America. Like I'm not quite sure who the demographic that these politicians are appealing to, but it doesn't seem that there's like a great majority of people who are actually susceptible in that extreme manner, right?
That's actually debatable since you've got extreme Trump supporters, extreme Warren supporters, you got extreme Bernie supporters. Like
Right.
it's different, but it's not extinct.
Well, but it doesn't seem that this sort of xenophobic mentality is catered towards all those extreme groups, right? Like at best, you might be catering to like a very small percentage of the population, but obviously the xenophobia is much greater than that. So for that larger portion of the population where people are like subconsciously or consciously making a decision to be xenophobic towards the Chinese, like do you think that your irrationality argument justifies that?
I think I might be some input here. Because I think many of the actions cannot be counted as xenophobic in general. Say like my compound has a rule of like, oh, if you weren't in this city for the past 2 weeks, you must be quarantined outside and then come back in. This is technically a form of xenophobia because you're not letting people from the outside in solely because they're from the outside. But like this is a quarantine measure. So I think what the U.S. government, well, or most people are adopting is, well, yeah, wear masks. Well, yeah, like quarantine people who are traveling in Asia, but don't push them under the metro. Like, don't kill them or don't harm them. So I think this is what the general mentality is instead of the pushing down the metro, like stab, 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 kill them all type of mentality. So I think both of your theories stand just in a case of like the extreme killing stab, stab people are of like that they're already xenophobic slash racist and the fear amplifies it. And most people are pretty rational, I would say.
I think again, Aaron and Jordy's discussion basically lies on both extreme ends, right? So I do believe that if I what I understood is correct, Jordy, you were talking about more extreme cases of racism. But then, so I was reading an article the other day, and then it was talking about how the New York Chinatown economy actually collapsed after the corona outbreak. So I think the problem around the world, at least, uh, is the subtle racism and the subtle xenophobia and fear that's making people kind of reject the Asians from their in group, which I think is the main problem that we identify uh, in this outbreak. Do you guys have any thoughts on why that might occur? Like the subtle ones, not the extreme ones, because we know that they're the minority, but the subtle racism and the subtle xenophobia that kind of is omnipresent inside our community right now.
I think it might just be slightly that is more not caused by people who are generally racist and xenophobic. I think that just might be because there are people who are scared and not very well informed and are therefore scared of going into Asian or Chinese communities because they think they might contract the virus. But that's just due to a lack of information, which is caused by just potential not factual news that, for example, like that could be found on social media, which shouldn't be trusted, which causes these kinds of subtler cases, as Bill said.
Yeah, so Mag, I think that's a really interesting comment to make as well, because really, really the point is how well people know about racism, how well people understand and can sympathize with the minorities who are actually having trouble inside this outbreak today. And we've all looked. I feel like we've all looked back at history and saw what racism and xenophobia actually caused to the world, right? Like the racism in America in the 1960s, or right even right now, the xenophobia that's occurring with immigrants and refugees inside Europe. And so I feel like we can all agree on the sense that even if this coronavirus outbreak can end and fortunately, hopefully, can end in the next few weeks or next few months, I feel like after all, we all have to fight this together as one and raise awareness and knowledge towards the global community as well about how we shouldn't be criticizing or discriminating people just because of their race and the societal context of what of the issues we're living in with right now.